Voyager turned its camera back towards Earth, marking what essentially amounted to Earth's first ever selfie, and that picture revealed a pale blue dot. Our vast knowledge of the universe did not emerge overnight. Our understanding of space may be entirely altered by the terrifying new encounter Voyager 1 had with an unknown entity. Our understanding of space, and some of our greatest accomplishments, would be lacking if it weren't for the journey of the probes. But one of the probes seems to be experiencing issues after years of orbiting the planet. Join us as we investigate the secrets of space as told by the two explorers. Space is being traversed by two of the most important space missions ever launched. Here is a glimpse of their fascinating story. Over the past 45 years, the twin Voyagers 1 and 2 have helped us learn a great deal about space and its many secrets. They have been gathering fresh data for the past 45 years. There were no phones, no internet, and no modern technology when these missions were sent into orbit. How ridiculous is that? The spacecraft has spent decades exploring space and giving us many unique opportunities to study the solar system since NASA launched Voyager 1 in 1977. Fascinating fact: the mission lasted longer than the scientists had anticipated. Even after years of research on Earth, things were quite different in space since spacecraft could drive themselves at the speed of other planets and meet the required milestones much more quickly. Things might happen far more quickly. The decision to switch the 30-year plan to an arbitrary 30-year journey was made possible by this. Despite having very divergent routes and departing ground control 2 weeks apart, Voyager 1 managed to take the lead. Voyager 1 reached less than half of the anticipated time in under 12 years. Yes, 12 years is considered a short time for space travel. Voyager 1 was also the first spacecraft to reach the edge of the solar system. It was a much riskier path for Voyager, and there was a higher chance of something going wrong. The risk of becoming lost in space was quite serious. We now have a far better understanding of space travel science because of these two missions. The twin Voyager data and images continue to astound scientists and NASA engineers. The two took the first images of Jupiter and gave us the famous red spot on this enormous planet. Other shocking findings about numerous stars and planets have come from these missions, including the identification of the largest natural satellite in the solar system, the presence of water on Europa, and the discovery of active volcanoes on Io. We were able to learn more about sites around our solar system and discover things we never knew existed or were even possible. Isn't it fascinating? Nearly 13 years after its launch, Voyager 1 landed on Saturn, its initial target. Scientists have had a better understanding of the planet after learning more about its brief 10-hour days and wind speeds. The days seems to have 24 hours, but 10 looks like so few on Titan, the moon of the distant planet. We learned a lot about nitrogenous environments on this far-off planet. 10 more moons were discovered after gathering data at Saturn. The two spacecraft separated to pursue their individual missions. Voyager 1 took a diversion and headed for the heliosphere, while Voyager 2 proceeded toward the last two planets in our solar system. These two expeditions brought up a number of new issues regarding the immensity of space, while also helping to provide answers to several others. For instance, Voyager 2 gathered hitherto unobserved information on Neptune, a planet that scientists have always regarded as inferior. They were amazed and puzzled by how a planet so far from the Sun, receiving so little solar energy, could support such diverse weather patterns and climates. By 2004, both probes had reached the termination shock, which may be considered the distant edges of our solar system, and were incredibly far from home. In our solar system, they had reached the termination shock, where wind slowed from millions of miles per hour to a pitiful 250 miles per hour, a speed that paled in comparison to the blazing cosmic speeds in the solar system. In space, nothing is small. Despite reaching its limit, Voyager 1 still had to enter interstellar space by passing through the heliosphere, the heliosphere and interstellar space. In case you were wondering, let's now define the heliosphere. It essentially acts as a shield to safeguard our planet and solar system from the powerful energy and radiation of interstellar space. Since its launch 45 years ago, Voyager 1 has traveled an astounding 12 billion miles in orbit, more than any other spacecraft. Even more astounding is the fact that this was achieved with comparatively minimal technology. Even though technology has evolved light years since then, there was no microprocessor in any probe even 10 years ago. Those didn't exist. The situation's extended survival was largely due to the fact that there is very little, if any, software. Its enhanced functionality was attributed by scientists and engineers to the need to hardwire everything. The onboard CPUs were, at best, quite low-power devices, which allowed the probes to run for such a long time. All the data acquired and recorded by the instruments on board the probes was stored on an 8-track tape recorder, a mechanism that used as much energy as a refrigerator light bulb was used to bring it back to Earth. Isn't that just crazy? Then it's amazing how much we achieved with such outdated technology. Is it possible for us to do all of that without a touchscreen and advanced technologies? A terrible initial encounter, but there's a problem. It looks like Voyager 1 is having problems. Has communication with aliens finally been achieved after 45 years of operation? Is there a more simple solution? Or is space travel much riskier than we initially anticipated? After spending decades in orbit, how is our trusted space shuttle Voyager 1 doing? Voyager 1 is about 14.5 billion miles from Earth. The fact that Voyager 1 is still operational is astounding. However, spending 35 years alone in the expanse of space gradually damages a spaceship, and this is beginning to happen. Scientists have found that they do not know the exact location of Voyager 1, despite the fact that it seems to be completely functional. Despite the fact that it didn't enter safe mode or cause any alarms, we have no idea where it is. NASA experts and scientists are puzzled, but not particularly surprised. It is scarcely big news when a probe this old breaks down like this. It remains to be revealed what happened to Voyager 1 and what it experienced on its journey into unexplored interstellar space. Is the spacecraft simply aging, or is some evil force at work? According to scientists, the probe might have suffered from electronic issues, which impairs communication fluency and makes it challenging to understand the data it delivers. According to NASA, the data being transmitted by Voyager may first be arbitrary and unrelated to the state of the Attitude Articulation and Control Systems, AC. The AC, which was responsible for keeping the high-gain antenna pointed toward Earth, began sending jumbled data in place of the usual health and condition reports. Over the past 3 years, NASA has been extending its energy reserves by rejecting non-essential components to keep everything running because the mission is expected to expire in 2030. However, there can be some roadblocks. Interestingly, despite the erroneous messages, they remain as powerful as ever because the radio signal is consistent. It is reassuring to know that Voyager's antenna is still pointing toward Earth. This illustrates that despite the inaccurate location data, the probe is still in the proper position. The present issue did not activate the fault protection technology designed to keep the spaceship safe in case of a malfunction. When NASA experts looked into the problem, they discovered that the ACs had been transmitting telemetry data through an onboard computer that had broken years before. They then patched the computer to prevent similar anomalies in the future. Finding and correcting the problem and correcting the actual criminal is the next stage. Although the issue isn't particularly concerning at the moment, the erratic signals are perplexing. NASA scientists are hard at work deciphering the most recent coded messages delivered by the decades-old spacecraft. When the space agency was first launched, it was prepared to face the vast and challenging conditions of space. Since Voyager has been inside the Sun's magnetic field, its operations have run more smoothly. This field has protected the probe from solar radiation and high-energy particles floating in space. Even if a high-energy particle hits the computer's memory chip, the harm is minimal, but over time, this harm could accumulate. Fortunately, NASA experts foresaw these possibilities and built the computers and internal components of the probe to withstand them. The end of a time frame. All worthwhile things must come to an end. Even if the mission is successful, tough decisions must be made to make room for expansion in the future. It looks like the Voyagers have crossed the finish line after 45 arduous years in deep space. We might be nearing the finish. Voyager 1 will have to retire due to the latest flaw and malfunction in its onboard systems. The U.S. Space Agency has begun turning down its equipment and saying goodnight to the investigation. It's incredible that even before the creation of modern technologies, humans were able to launch probes into space that survived for such a long time. The mission has concluded after 2 identical probes provided the closest pictures of the 2 largest planets in our solar system to mankind to date. By 2030, the probes will be retired, noting that both Voyagers have functioned 10 times beyond their warranty. NASA is incredibly pleased with their performance. The first Voyager probe still has 4 functional parts, and the second probe still has 5. The decomposing plutonium that powers them will ultimately run out. Every year, the battery output drops by 4 watts, requiring NASA to make some tough choices. Parts of the investigation have been progressively rejected by NASA experts. For instance, they shut off the heater for the Vital Cosmic Ray Detector in 2019. When NASA dismantles the spacecraft piece by piece, the magnetometer and the plasma science equipment will likely be the last to be removed. These are kept contained within the spacecraft's body by the excess heat generated by the onboard CPUs. The others, which are suspended from a 13-meter fiberglass boom, will require the most time to cool. The distance the Voyagers have gone from Earth is another reason to terminate the expedition. Currently, it takes Voyager 1 and Voyager 2 18 hours, respectively, to relay a radio message to Earth. As the probes travel farther apart, communication becomes more challenging because that period increases by 3 to 4 light seconds per year. Nonetheless, the fact that it will be difficult to collect data won't stop us from receiving useful information. All those unanswered questions will have to wait a little longer.